an amazing and inspiring person. And he's an award-winning author. You can find him across stages of TEDx. He works with a lot of different companies in terms of strategies and telling his story and aligning his story to, to business today. He's an international keynote speaker, motivational speaker, and an extreme adventurer. I'm going to let him tell his story about this adventure that he went on years ago. Welcome to the show, Neal. How are you today?
Good, Mark. It's so good to be on the show and finally connect.
Yeah. I tell you, I've been doing a lot of research on you, and you're quite the inspiration. I love your confidence, the way that you tell your story, your life's journey. It's quite impressive, and it sounds like your mom was a big part of your life, and she sounded like a strong and inspiring woman.
Oh, she was a really strong woman. My mother was an activist. She was the first woman of color out of South Africa to be awarded a scholarship. So she went through high school, university in Cape Town, and then came to the United States. And she ended up doing her master's at Syracuse University and graduated in 1948. There were not that many women in the United States, let alone women of color, let alone foreign women. And Mom was one of those groundbreaking front runners, a true woman who believed in the power of education, the power of knowledge, the application of that knowledge. And she was offered many teaching posts in the United States. And she turned those posts down because she wanted to return to South Africa to contribute to our country, to make a difference in our country. And she was a fighter, and she came back here and she fought for equality, not just for the anti-apartheid movement, but the equality of women and women's rights, the equality of people earning the same salary irrespective of the color of their skin. She truly was an inspiration and still continues to be an inspiration today. I've picked up her work. My nephew, Jesse, is going to be continuing our work as well. We truly are a family of, we want to make a difference.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, what an amazing woman that she was, and raising just as equal as amazing son. Tell us, Neal, tell us about the Neal Petersen as a little boy growing up in South Africa. I know you had a childhood physical disability, I understand. Obviously, you fought through poverty. Walk us through Neal Petersen as a young boy in South Africa.
My mother was this woman of strength, and I have a sister both of us were born here in South Africa. She's older than I am, and yes, I was diagnosed at age 18 months with only having one complete hip joint, and went through 3 major surgeries by the age of 5, and that last surgery had me in a body cast from my ankle to my chest. And when I came between all these different surgeries, I'd go into water therapy because I couldn't walk as this kid. And after the final surgery, after being in this body cast for many, many months, I was at home. I was going back to water therapy. And during the time in hospital, a doctor asked me, what was I interested in? And I said boats, because my father was at sea. I grew up in a coastal city, Cape Town, the ocean on either side of the peninsula. So it's a very big part of our culture, our ingrainment is the sea. And for me, my freedom was in water. So coming from this environment of having to fight from the very, very beginning of my life really emboldened me to become a fighter. And then to make things worse, I was born what they would classify in South Africa as so-called colored. The apartheid laws of the country said, based on the color of your skin, where you can live, what job you can have, how much money you could earn. And this is what my mother was fighting against, was she was an anti-apartheid activist. So I grew up in the struggle of apartheid, and we didn't have much money. My mother was a school teacher. So the economic challenges of, yes, we had a roof over our head, yes, we had a car, and we could get around, but we did not have excess money. I did not know how poor we really were until I saw people in the yacht club and what they could throw away, and their scraps was more than we even had. And when I eventually left South Africa and went to the United States and saw how wealthy the United States was, it was, wow, this is an eye-opener. But one of the things that I was raised with was that power of knowledge and that hunger and curiosity to know how things work and how can you make things different and what is out there, what is possible. This is the fundamental roots with which I was raised. And again, my father was a diver, and a man of the sea. That was where his love of the sea was rooted and where my love of the sea came. But he also was an alcoholic. So I saw the good and the bad. And I also came to realize that I have choices. I can either be defeated by my circumstances and become an alcoholic, or I can become a fighter, be like my mom, and want to change the world, want to be a part of something bigger than all of us put together.
Going around the world, I mean, that's on a single-handed yacht race, 27,000 miles, I remember reading, 9 months at sea, all by yourself in a small yacht that you designed and built yourself. That intrigues me, and that I can't wait to hear. I want you to share with our audience, what inspired you to do that, and what did you learn? What was the greatest piece of memory, or what was the greatest thing that just came out of that experience?
Well, I got into that boat out of desperation, and I didn't just one day wake up and say, I want to sail. I want to race around the world. I want to go 27,000 miles. It was a process. And that process began long before I sailed to the start line. That process began with that hunger of, I want to do something with my life. I want to go out there and be somebody. I want to make a difference. And I fell in love with sailing from books. And people says, you don't belong in this yacht club. You're colored. You're working class. You're disabled. Give up. And those are absolutely the wrong words to say to a kid. Give up. Kids don't give up. Kids see the end result and say, I want to sail. Like when riding a bicycle, you don't tell a kid how many times he's going to fall off the bicycle and scrape his or her knees. All that kid sees is what's going to be like to be riding that bicycle down the road. And yes, you're going to fall and you're going to hurt yourself. You can get bloodied, but you're going to get right back on that bicycle and ride again until finally you master it. So the sailing became that hunger to discover a big world out there, to cross oceans, to meet people, to engage with people, and always asking, what's next? What can I do differently? What can I do better? And people weren't very forthcoming in giving the opportunities. So I had to fight for those opportunities. And I could not, my parents had no money. They couldn't give me a boat. So many people are just given things, and when you get given something, you take it for granted. But I had to fight for, if I'm going to have the ability to cross an ocean and race around the world, I've got to start somewhere. So I thought I could find the money, sponsorship, for a race from England to America called the O-Star Yacht Race. And people would sponsor me because young, I was driven, and I felt that I deserved a spot to be able to get to that yacht race. No, that didn't happen. Nobody was willing to give a boat. Nobody said, oh, you young, we're going to cut you a break. Oh, you are really focused and driven and you're a good sailor. Here you go, take a boat. No.
Right.
They put every obstacle in the way. So the only other option I had.
And wasn't there another part to that, Neal, that it required 40 feet and your sailboat was 38 feet?
Yes. So the boat I built was 38 foot, and I built the boat only for the race across the Atlantic Ocean, the O-Star race. I did not build it for going around the world. I built it for one single purpose. And eventually, when I launched that boat, it was nicknamed the floating coffin by the South African media. They said he's going to kill himself in that boat because look at what he lacks. Yes, I didn't have 6 winches. I had 4 winches. I didn't have brand new sails. I had 2 good new sails and others that were taken and modified from other boats. I didn't have all the latest and greatest and the glitzy. I didn't have technology on the boat. So people said he'll kill himself in that. What people didn't see was the heart. If you're going to do something, you better have a lot of heart. You better have a lot of spirit. You better have a lot of fight inside of you, because it's not about your hardware. It's how you're going to take what you've got and keep it together and keep a goal. If I had to wait until I had everything, until I had the perfect boat, I would still be waiting. But it comes to a point where you say, okay, I have enough. My boat is good enough. My skills are good enough. I'm going to go out there and do it so I can become better.
So if somebody's in the audience and they are, whether they are self-employed, right? They work for themselves. They work for a company. Maybe they're thinking about starting a company, or they are trying to improve themselves as a personal brand. what kind of advice could you give that audience from your learning experiences, and how does it align to business, tactical strategies, things that they can actually apply? What would be some things you could provide people advice on?
You've got to make a start. You've got to make a commitment. You need a vision, and you need to find people who can move that vision together moving forward. You can't do this alone.
Right.
When I decided that I was going to build my own boat to go to the start of this race, I could have held out for perfection. I want the perfect boat for the race because I want to win the race. I want to be first. I want to be the biggest. I want to be the greatest. Yes, we all want to have those things. But if we just wait until we have everything, we'll have nothing. So you have to start somewhere. And for me, that start was, I built a hull. Found people to help me build the hull. I did the best I could do with the tools that I had and the materials I could get within the budget I had. When I started building the hull, I wasn't sure yet how I was going to finish the deck. But I stayed working. I stayed focused on, I've got 2 jobs right now. I've got to get the hull built with the team I have, and I've got to find the resources to put the deck on. And by the time the hull was nearly done, because I stayed focused on the strategy for what's next, I had the resources for more material to keep the team together to now build the deck. And as soon as we started building the deck, I started saying, okay, we're going to need the keel, we're going to need the rudder, we're going to need a mast, we're going to need hardware to trim the sails. I didn't have any of those things, but again, I went out to find it. That is what an entrepreneur does. It is, you innovate, you create your plan, you create your strategy, you know where you've got to go, but you know you have to make modifications to match the budget, to match the talent base. And by not waiting, but building, yes, you're going to make mistakes. It's not going to be perfect, but you know what, you're moving forward. What are you learning? Who are you inspiring? Who are you leading? And that is how you start to overcome things. And you start to also see the progress. If I had to just focus on the end result and not on the process, I'd be overwhelmed. So the part was, get the boat as best as I can in the water and prove that it floats. Not the best boat, not the biggest boat, not the fastest boat, the best that I can do.
That's
the best the team can do. And then when we had the boat in the water, yes, we were next to the very fancy boats, the boats we would like to have had. But you know what? They were still sitting there and we were sitting next to them. And then it was getting the experience of, I've got to get out now and start training. I've got to cross the ocean. I've got to get to my first yacht race. And I went out and I did that. And everything didn't go the way I planned. I was heading for England. I ended up injuring myself in mid-ocean and damaging the boat in mid-ocean because of various circumstances. I ended up in Ireland. I didn't throw my hands up and say, oh, well, gee, it's over.
Now, when you injured yourself, is that the time that you busted your eyelid open?
Exactly.
I love that story and how you tell it. Do you mind sharing that story with the audience?
I was crossing the equator in an area called the doldrums. And at that point, I was feeling very lonely on the boat because I didn't have, those are the days before satellite technology. This was before we were able to have GPS and various systems on board. And I was looking for a ship to talk to so I could confirm via VHF radio that my sextant navigation was within the region of what their satellite technology was saying where they are in. So I just needed a verification of a position. So I'm really scanning that horizon to talk to somebody and to get information and to get a weather update. And as I stood at the wrong moment rising up, the boom came flopping across the boat, whacked my forehead, just like a golf club hits a golf ball. My head was the golf, and slashes open my eyebrow, and I'm gushing blood, and I'm in trouble because I have no money for a medical kit, and I don't have a distress beacon to say I'm in trouble. All I had on the boat was a rusty sewing needle, and I thought, could I stitch my forehead back together with a sewing needle on a rolling boat with an eye swollen shut? Couldn't do it. So my other option, clothes peg, or in South Africa, we call it, well, in America, we call it a clothes pin.
Right.
And I ended up putting the wound together, put the clothes peg on it, and it ended up stopping to bleed. The bleeding stopped, the wound grew back together again. and continued the voyage. And I went to another island to actually see a doctor. And the doctor did look at the wound and said, the wound is fine, but you need to go out for help. You're crazy. And you know what? Sometimes to build something of significance, you really have to be crazy. And look, again, all the research that you've done, and by the way, you've done a wonderful job on researching me.
Thank you.
The talent that you brought to your show and will bring to your show comes back down to that curiosity, solving problems, adapting. Yeah, we don't have the visual side working, but we have the audio side. We do the best we can do with what we've got.
Definitely.
We make it. The show goes on. I ended up in Ireland, and the Irish looked at my boat and they says, "You came from where in that?" And South Africa. And they said, "Geez, are you crazy?" And then they said, "Where are you going to go?" And I said, "I'm going to do this race from England to America." And they says, "Now we know you're crazy, but we're going to help you." And that support, because I got out there and I did something, people respect. And they came on board, and it was one of the biggest launches of my career, of going forward, because suddenly people didn't see what I lacked. People didn't see the color of my skin. People didn't see the obstacles. They saw so far the accomplishment and what now was possible. And that became a slingshot, enabled me to finish the transatlantic race, at which point I said, I still want to race around the world. And we tried to find the money for a new boat, but again, we couldn't find the money. And that is the stage we ended up lengthening the boat, adding on the 2 feet on the back of the boat, repainting, renaming the boat, and going to this tremendous round the world race, 27,000 miles. It's going to be about 9 months from the time the race would leave America to returning to America. I was going to go through 4 legs, of which 2 would be in the worst, most remote, loneliest part of the planet, the Southern Ocean, where icebergs would be more the norm. I would see ships very, very rarely, where the winds would be at times near hurricane force conditions in the summer, the good months. You can't be there in the winter because it is hurricane force conditions and you can't survive. And I had no choice but take what I had and hang on to the dream and push myself to the maximum limit with a team ashore comprising of my girlfriend, Gwen, and all the volunteers that we could bring together to help get me off the dock to the start line, where I am now totally single-handed, totally alone to execute the plan.
So what does it mentally take to get you ready for a journey like that? I mean, it must have been fear inside you. It must have been, what if I fail? What if I die? Get that courage to do that.
Worse than that, people were telling me I was going to die.
Oh, boy.
Crazy going in that boat in those conditions. Don't do it. So you have to not only overcome the criticism of other people, you got to overcome your own self-doubt and ask yourself, am I going to be ready for this? And Mark, you are never ready for it. It doesn't matter how much you plan, how much you prepare. When you take on something this monumental, you are never, ever totally 100% ready. But again, it comes back down to you do everything within your willpower to get ready. You break down this race into its components. That first component of 27,000 miles around the world is you've got to get to the start line. You've got to plan and prepare for that start. You can't finish a round the world race if you don't start. You've got to get onto the start, and then you break it down. There's 4 legs. So you break it down leg by leg. I just got to get now, in this case, Charleston, South Carolina, to my home port of Cape Town, South Africa. And that's what you focused on. You don't focus on the Indian Ocean. You don't focus on the Pacific Ocean because you're in the Atlantic right now. And now you got to get through the spectator boats. That's the most dangerous part of each leg. All those spectators who want to photograph, who want to get up close and take a look at you and wave one more time to a crazy man goodbye. And you've got your fellow competitors who's only interested in one thing, being first across the start line and getting their heck away from the danger zone and getting on with the job. And so everybody is in a position of jockeying. And I was always very competitive. I wanted to get that start gun. I want to be first over the line. I'm not going to be first over the finish line, but I sure as heck going to be first over the start line at every chance I get. And so you run the gauntlet, and you get through the start. You get through the first day. You get through the first 1,000 miles. You get through the first week. You get through the first month. And it's all the time you are building progression. And in a business, when you're building a business, you've got to know what are all the steps that you have to take.
Yeah.
Not the big end result, but the little steps will bring you towards the end result. And if you take all of those correct steps along the way, with the right people supporting you, you will get there. They catch you when you make a mistake. You have people to draw upon when you don't know something. You can ask the questions because you have that support team in place. And a true leader doesn't lead from up front. A true leader leads from in among the troops or even behind in pushing the troops forward. I may have been alone on that boat, but the people who helped me build the boat, the people who helped prepare the boat, when my girlfriend who helped get me emotionally and mentally ready to say goodbye and let me go, they are all part of the team. So to race around the world takes tremendous mental and emotional stability and strength. The physical comes in a distant second. But if you're not mentally ready for success, if you're not mentally ready for the unknown, if you're not mentally ready to take the risks, the calculated risks, you're going to just stay being mediocre. You're going to just stay in the same place and not really progress and prosper.
Yeah.
But those who have that mental strength are going to move the mountains. And that first race around the world, I didn't finish the race. In the second leg, I hit very, very severe weather conditions and capsized.
Oh, no.
And the boat popped back upright out of the capsize. My mast was broken. I was almost 2,000 miles from South Africa at the time of the capsizing. I was closer to Kerguelen Island and Antarctic waters than I was to my home port. And there was still 5,000 miles in front of me. And it was a very difficult decision with this broken mast. What do I do? And again, this is where you dig deep inside of yourself and say, okay, I'm in trouble. And I am scared as hell right now.
Right.
But it is one thing to be afraid, to be fearful. It's another thing to be panicked and paralyzed. So you've got to now quickly pull yourself together. That's back to that emotional, mental strength. And say, what do I need to do now to save the boat, to stabilize the boat? And how do I get back to land so I can fight again? And I spent a couple of weeks limping this damaged boat back to South Africa. And by the time I got to South Africa, the fleet was in Australia. By the time I got the boat fixed and ready to go back to sea, the fleet had left Australia and was in the Pacific Ocean heading for Cape Horn. And everything around is about season. You are in the Southern Ocean in the summer months because anything outside of the summer months is ungodly. And I had to make a very difficult looking at the facts. I was at that point 12,000 miles behind the fleet. And I couldn't catch the fleet. And winter was coming. How am I going to get around the world and get around Cape Horn before winter? Did the mathematics didn't lie. It told me I would not get around Cape Horn before winter. I would be there in the worst of the winter.
Oh, wow.
And I'm calculating. And so at that point, I made the decision not to continue in the race, but to abandon the race and save my energy to fight another day. If you can't survive, you can't go forward. And I ended up modifying again, adapting the plan. And then 4 years later, I was back on the start line, doing the plan, working things through with more knowledge, more experience, same boat, but much more sophisticated systems. But again, much greater experience. And it was still tough. I can't lie to you, it was not an easy undertaking, but 195 days at sea collectively alone, 9 months, 27,000 miles around the planet.
So when you're, out there and your mind must be just racing itself, you have a lot to think about to stay mentally strong. You have a lot to think about in terms of making sure that, if something does go wrong, how are you going to, address that? I just can't imagine that. I mean, that's a powerful mindset that you have, and the mental strength to condition oneself to be able to do that. I don't know. It's every day. I think you just have to challenge yourself and do these things. And just like you said, just start and
yes, and
don't be afraid. I mean, it's okay to be
without,
afraid, but have people to help you. Find those resources. Dig deep. You'll learn that you are so much stronger as an individual than you ever thought. I'm guessing, right? If you just do these
yes.
things you mentioned.
And when you're out there in the middle of nowhere, you can't say, hang on, we're going to take a break right now and put everything on hold, on pause, and we'll come back and do this again tomorrow.
Right.
No, you've got to keep going day after day. And on my website, on the nealpetersen.com website, I have some of the videos of rounding Cape Horn and the storm I encountered. We don't have time to talk about that storm off Cape Horn, but there are a whole lot of different pieces on the website about how I survived some of these things. And we also have videos on YouTube that you can get through the website too. Go and take a look at those things. Subscribe, because there's more material coming. We're shooting material. We're pulling back some of these stories every day right now of how do we get through these things? How do we right now get through COVID-19? People are struggling. People are in the middle of their storm right now. People are losing their jobs. Companies that some of these entrepreneurs have founded are losing customers because they are shut down. They are locked down.
Right.
How are we going to change? We're able to do those things because we have the resilience as mankind. We've got to look at the planet and what we're doing to the environment and say, hang on, is this working? Are we going to destroy our only home? If I didn't protect my boat, I won't survive. If we don't protect Mother Earth, mankind won't survive. These are the hard decisions that are rooted in science, rooted in mathematics, rooted in expertise. We have to become experts and do the right all the time just to survive.
Well, Neal, I tell you, you have one amazing life journey. I am inspired just getting to know you and hear you speak. And thank you for your time today. I'm really excited that you participated in the relaunch of Going Beyond the Post.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate this. Talk to you again.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.